Thank you for the warm welcome, and it's really great to be. I was just here a few weeks ago, actually, and a thank you to Shane and Bonnie for having me and inviting me to speak, and of course, Rick and Jim, freedom heroes. Wow, you guys, you talked about so many things that I can relate to. I don't think I had too many judges that really liked me either. so. And, we had on our show, Chris Barber and I have a show every Thursday night called House Arrest that we do a live stream on YouTube. And we had John Carpe on last night talking about Bill C-34. And all these bills, like you were saying, all these censorship bills are quite frightening. But they're doing this stuff already. They're just trying to make it so they're not going to get in trouble or get in less trouble for doing it already. If they can freeze your bank account, they're already opening your mail if they think they have a reason to. We know that the data that was collected from Freedom Convoy participants that had their bank accounts frozen has been collected and shared. We don't know who it's been shared it with. We don't know how many times it's been shared. We don't know where that information is now. But if your name came up in that regard with the Freedom Convoy, then there's multiple agencies that have your data, and we don't know where it is. Not only that, maybe some of you heard about the King Air spy plane that was flying over Ottawa during the Freedom Convoy. Of course, at first they denied it. It was our military spying on us. First, they lied about it, said there was no plane. Then they said, oh, it was just a plane that was doing training exercises. What it was actually doing was it was the military that was flying over the Freedom Convoy with equipment that could ping your phones and scrape every bit of data off of your phone and those around you. So they knew who you were around. They've got your pictures, they got your emails, they got your text messages. And we don't know where that data is either. Now that was done. Typically in Canada, you need a warrant to obtain information like that. There was no warrants issued for that. And this is what these people are capable of. So my situation, and I like speaking at these things, and I have to admit I do struggle day to day sometimes because, of course, I was born and raised in Saskatchewan. I'm a prairie girl through and through. I grew up on the back of a horse. And I forget what, I just lost my train of thought, sorry. Anyways, but I was born and raised out here. And I was raised to believe in these institutions. I was raised to believe in our healthcare system. I was always told Canada had the best healthcare system in the whole entire world. I was raised to respect our military, which of course I do, I still do, and we revere our veterans absolutely. I was taught that I could trust the police. I was taught that I could trust the judicial system. We don't have a justice system in Canada. We have a legal system in Canada. There's a big, big difference. So I grew up believing in Canada and everything that I thought that it stood for. And then, of course, I moved to Alberta in the late 90s, and I worked predominantly in the oil patch here. And I only really got involved in all of this stuff because of the legislation that was being brought in from Justin Trudeau, Bill C-69, Bill C-48, and these harmful policies that I was seeing affecting people in my community, people that I cared about, people coming into my office, shoving their resume in my hand with tears in their eyes because I didn't know how they were going to make their mortgage payments or feed their families. And I thought, this isn't right. I mean, I work in the oil patch. I know I ran frac crews. I understand we have the most environmentally friendly and efficient energy sector in all of the world, and I couldn't figure out why our politicians weren't flying all over the world shouting that from the rooftops. Instead, we were being vilified, name called, over stuff like this, and it was disheartening. So I jumped into the independence movement. A lot of you will know that I joined the Wexit movement right the day after the 2019 federal election when I watched Justin Trudeau elected as prime minister before our polls had even closed here. And so I got a hold of Peter Downing and I said, hey, whatever you need, let me be your coordinator for the southeastern Alberta. We'll start doing town halls and we'll start talking to people about Wexit. So, and then the Freedom Convoy happened. And then I went from thinking we need to leave as fast as we can to, oh my God, this country is so worth saving. This is the Canada that I believe that I grew up in. And still, on our way to Ottawa, I still believed that the government would talk to us, even though they were already calling us racists and misogynists in the media and saying terrible things about us. But I was naive. I still believed. I still believed that when we got there, somebody would come and talk to us, because in 2021, we saw I think it was the Wet'suwet'en protests with the First Nations that were actually committing vandalism and mischief on the railway lines. And Justin Trudeau kept saying, we got to keep talking to them. We got to have dialogue. We got to hear their concerns. So even though we know that if you had COVID concerns or pandemic mandates concerns, they didn't want to hear, I still believed in my gut that somebody would come and talk to us. My MP, Glenn Motz, worked very hard behind the scenes, and we found out later, so did former MP Michelle Ferrari. We're trying to get some of the MPs or somebody to come and talk to us, and they just flat out refused, because I'm pretty scary, as you can see. Now, the interesting thing was, their excuse was they didn't know who to talk to. They didn't know who to talk to in the organization, but they sure as hell knew who to arrest, didn't they? So, I mean, that speaks volumes in itself. And even when we were there, you know, the entire health system during COVID, I believed in it. I believed in the doctors. I believed in the nurses. And then I started seeing the doctors and the nurses that were actually saying something and standing up, being vilified, canceled, and smeared, having their licenses taken away over this stuff. And I thought, if they're not going to listen to doctors, holy shit, right? Pardon my language. And so even when I was arrested, I still believed I'm not a criminal. And I knew I wasn't a criminal. And I was like, this doesn't happen to people. You know, they're going to save me. Something's going to happen. They're going to see that I'm innocent. I thought when I was arrested that they would have me sign a promise to appear or something, and then I'd be out the next day. Well, lo and behold, if I didn't spend 18 days in jail following that, denied bail. With Justice Bourgeois. Yeah, none of my judges liked me either. She especially didn't. She didn't much care for my husband either. But it's a whole new world out there. You know, I just, as an aside, I was in Calgary last week reporting on Carrie Sakamoto's motion hearings. Carrie is one of our vaccine-injured friends. And I was in the Alberta King's Bench courthouse. Wow. Now I understand why Keith Wilson and Eva Chipiuk and these lawyers that flew into Ottawa were literally beside themselves with how Ottawa runs their courtroom. We would never start on time. Our breaks would always take too long. There'd be 2-hour lunches. We'd leave early. If we got 4 hours of court time in a day, in our 2-year trial for mischief, by the way, we would have been lucky. And I walked into this courtroom out here, and I was quite shocked at how efficient they're ran. So I understand now, a little bit more now, why these lawyers were just absolutely horrified of what's happening in these Ottawa courts. Where was I back in my story? So that I was arrested. And I was like, well, of course they're going to let me go. I mean, I'm just going to have to sign this because I still believed in the system. And then I got stuck in the system. And I thought, well, you know, I still believe in the system. Once we get to this trial, it's all going to work out. I just trust it's going to work out. And I was never worried, per se. I mean, I consider myself to be, you know, I have my God. I believe in God, and I believe that he was with us the entire time, throughout the organization, throughout the trip for sure. We drove across Canada in the middle of winter in the longest convoy in history with no accidents or injuries, which is a miracle in and of itself. But I still believed that the justice system was going to save me. And then I got into that courtroom and I saw how these guys behaved. You want to talk about a two-tier justice system? Chris and I drove out last April for our verdict, and when we got there, we found out, you probably all read about the pro-Palestinian protests that were happening out there for the previous 2 years. Well, our first Crown prosecutor that was on our case, that actually lost his file after my book came out, He said because I defamed him. I'm like, hold my beer, dude. You know, this guy was absolutely like a rabid dog frothing at the mouth. He tried to throw me in jail 6 ways from Sunday that entire first year that I was after our arrest. So we get to Ottawa and find out that he had also been in charge of a case where 5 pro-Palestinian protesters had been charged with the same, arrested by the Ottawa police, charged with the same and or similar charges to myself and Chris, and he let them off. He said they could write a letter of apology and make a donation to the charity of, well, I don't know if it was their choice or his choice. I spent just about 50 days in jail. But it was for all the wrong reasons. It was for the wrong cause. I wasn't the right Canadian. I'm not the right Métis, clearly, right? They didn't even believe me when I said that. So my whole point of the story is that, you know, I believed right up until the bitter end that in Canada, in the Canada that I grew up in, I believe in Canadians. I do not believe in this government. I've seen the best of what Canadians can be. And so that's why I say sometimes I'm torn, because I went from growing up in Canada, loving it, loving our multiculturalism, loving the diversity, loving the land, loving the people, loving the camaraderie, loving how we looked after each other and really cared about each other. And that's what really came through for me during the convoy. And then I, you know, joined the Maverick Party. We need to leave. I had this life-changing, obviously, experience where I finally felt like I understood how the Americans felt. You know, how they revere their flag and their patriotism is so sacred to them. And I grew up along border towns in Saskatchewan, and I was always not jealous, but envious and a bit in awe. Like I thought they were like super patriots. And the Canadians I thought were patriotic, but not to that like level. And for the Freedom Convoy for me was the first time that I ever really experienced what I think that feeling was like. And here we are now, 4 years later, following the longest mischief trial of all time. I'm still on house arrest. My sentence will be over in January of 2027. But Chris and our house arrest sentence is up in October. And then after that, we have a curfew. And I just think it's the most hilarious thing in the whole world. I'm 53 years old. Do you think it's punishment for me to have to either stay home or be in my house at 10 o'clock at night? I mean, I'm not suffering. And that's what they hate. That's exactly what they hate the most. They hate that we're not suffering. I've had people accuse me of lying about going to jail because I didn't come out looking broken and beaten and sad. But I will never let them break me. I promised a police officer that. Or actually, it was a supporter in the courthouse, one of the sheriffs in the courthouse in Ottawa, that said to me, "Don't let them break you." And I said, "Don't worry, I won't. They picked on the wrong grandma." Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm keeping track of my notes. So, I mean, I think this is an important path for us to talk about. I'm thrilled to see so many people out here tonight. Standing room only is absolutely amazing. On a Friday night, no less. Well done, you guys. It's an important conversation, and I'm thrilled that people are here that haven't been here before. These are the people that we want to be talking to and explaining all the benefits that could come. I'm just so happy that all these TPAs are going. Chris Scott, Shane, Jeff Rath, Mitch Sylvester, now Keith Wilson's on board. You know, all these, Kathy Flett, they're just driving around the province and have been for months and months and months. They're having these conversations. And it's important for us to know the pros, as we all know the cons. We all know the cons, but I think there's a lot of reason for hope. And even, I say, if you're on the fence even if you don't know which way you want to go, at least check option 2 on October 19th, because that will give you at least time to educate yourself more. It's just going to keep that door open. And I'm certainly hoping that we get a win on the 19th of October, because I think we need one. I mean, I think we're just sort of, well, I'm just sort of at that point where Mark Carney, don't go away mad, just go away. Right? I mean, it's sad. It is sad that it's come to this. But again, I think that we're known to be generous, caring people. And I think, you know, we have to be strong first. We have to be strong and stable before we can help other people. And, you know, we can complain about equalization, and it is a huge, giant problem. However, I don't think people would mind so much giving some of that money away. Not all of it. It's an incredible lot of money. If we could even just get a thank you, maybe sometimes, instead of criticized and called hillbillies and rednecks, or whatever it is that whatever the name of the day is. But we can't do that unless we're strong and stable ourselves. It doesn't make any sense. You're not going to help your neighbor if it's going to put you in a detrimental position. You shouldn't. You need to come from a place of strength and stability before you can help other people. And there's so many things I think, we don't need the rest of Canada. We don't need to live under the thumb of the Liberal government. And my personal opinion is we'll never see a Conservative government in Canada again. We'll certainly never see a Conservative majority in Canada again, as far as I'm concerned. And that raises an interesting question. Because Pierre Poilievre, I'm sure a lot of you guys heard him out here a few weeks ago. He came out to do his unity rah, 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 and they're going to come back and do that. Well, I saw Pierre Poilievre speak in Ottawa a few weeks ago. And Jason Kenney, my good buddy, Jason Kenney, it's just talk. I hear that they're going to fight. Well, how are you going to fight? We have a Liberal government that just literally stole a majority for the first time in our history ever. What are you going to do about it? Stand up on the stage and tell me that you're going to fight? Maybe we're done fighting. Maybe Alberta is just tired of always having to fight to get our resources to market, to have a voice in Confederation, to lower our taxes. We don't have to always fight. We can, we're strong, and we're very independent-minded people. I'm very much in the position that I'm in because I'm a stubborn old bat, and I don't abide a bully. Oh man, just lost. Yeah, fight. And I was so glad I got to go to the debate between Jason Kenney and Keith Wilson a few weeks ago in Calgary, and Jason Kenney kept talking about that too. Fight. And I was so happy that Keith addressed that, because we're done fighting. We don't need to fight. We have the people, we have the talent, we have the resources right here. And we're being used and taken advantage of. And of course, then every once in a while we get the old bone of the pipeline. I don't know how you got MOU. I know that it gave a lot of people in Alberta hope, but it was just a giant crock of what. I knew it. It was just useless signatures on a useless piece of paper. And you can see already that Carney is kind of wavering on that now. What he comes here, signs an MOU, the next day tells the First Nations, well, they have a veto on it. Well, no, they don't have a veto on it. This is supposed to be a democratic society, like the Sturgeon Lake Cree First Nation shutting down the petitions. That reserve that chief is from has 33 people on it. And so he's trying to tell you that you need permission from 33 people to have a petition, to exercise your democratic rights. And now another band wants to have Danielle Smith investigated for treason. And I was really happy with her response to that, by the way, because I think she's right. These guys need to check themselves. You just don't start talking stuff like that. They just start throwing these terms around. I'm used to it. I've been called every name in the book you can't even imagine. And that's okay. But, you have to, if you want to be respected, you have to earn respect. And I think that's one of the reasons that the convoy was so successful, because for the majority, and my message and Chris's message was always, when you are disrespectful, you lose people immediately. We want people on our side. We want people to support this cause. And so this is one of the things that I sort of worry about too, is what comes after. I see so many similarities what's going on with Alberta independence that went on with the convoy, from the division, the name calling, and it concerns me for what it's going to be like after, whether we win or lose. I don't want to see any of these. I think COVID did enough damage to our humanity, and it worries me what's going to come after that. So carry the message, but try to carry it respectfully and pleasantly, and don't let these guys suck you in, because as soon as they suck you in and get you to call them a name or hypothetical sucker punch. That's really all they need. And we're better than that anyways. I don't see a lot of pro-independence-minded people out there shouting and calling names, but I'm sure seeing a lot of it coming from the other side. So I'm glad that I'm on the adult side of the table on this one. Anyways, I won't take up too much more time. I'm sure everybody wants to have a quick break. But I would just a couple things I want to touch on before I continue is that I don't want to live in a country where we have medical professionals going to our ill, our vaccine injured, our senior citizens, our depressed, our mentally handicapped, and offering them MAID. I want to live in a country that looks after its most vulnerable like we used to do. We take care of our own. We don't dismiss them and then help them kill themselves. I have strong beliefs about that just because of the way that I was raised. I understand why MAID the inception. I understand why it was created. I understand what it's for. But they just killed a 26-year-old man from BC who was diabetic and going blind, and he was also depressed. So he did have some issues. But why didn't they give this guy a counselor? You know, I'm sure you read in the National Post or the papers about 2 weeks ago, a guy collapsed in the Tim Hortons drive-thru, and a doctor got him off to MAID. We have basically drive-thru MAID now. Carrie Sakamoto, Kayla Pollack, Dan Hartman, Kevin Street, Steve Johnson, all of these vaccine-injured people have been waiting 5 years to get some help, but they could go get MAID tomorrow. They have been left behind, and that this is not the country that I grew up in. This is not how we treat people. I don't want to live in a country where they can just freeze your bank account anytime they want. That's what's coming, you guys. That's what's coming. If you piss them off or you say something they don't like or you talk back, they're just going to freeze your bank account. I don't want to live in a country where our citizens and our veterans are beaten in the streets simply for going to the capital city and asking, please, sir, could we have our freedoms back? Please, sir, could you hear the other side of the conversation? Please, sir, people are killing themselves. I think this needs to stop. Can we have a conversation? We do not live in a democracy. We do not live in a democracy. We do not have free speech already. We are living in a country where they want to tell you what to say, what to think, what to believe, how to behave, you know. Definitely don't do any mischief because it's the most heinous crime in all of Canada. You know, and the two-tier justice system, you know, it gets really frustrating almost every day seeing these cases that are just getting thrown out or tossed out. I was just talking to some gentlemen before. We were talking about it on the Rebel live stream today. There's an Alberta man that has been released again. He's been released twice in the last 2 months, I believe. For sexual interference, sexual assault, confinement, unlawful confinement. You know, some pretty terrible. One of his victims was 12, and he keeps getting released. And again, I spent 50 days in jail because I'm really scary, really, really scary. So scary, in fact, that the Crown Prosecutor is appealing my acquittals for the 2 intimidation charges that I was originally charged with. Intimidation. I love it. I mean, if you can't laugh at this situation, even though it's not funny, I can laugh at it because I'm living it. But I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It was 2 years in a courtroom in a place that Ottawa's, we are not the same. I met a lot of fantastic residents of Ottawa, but there's a bubble there and we are not the same. They do not care about you. Mark Carney certainly doesn't care about you. And, you know, I just wish you'd stand up. Like, you're meeting the President of the United States. Could you just pretend that you're proud of the country that you're there to represent, perhaps? And lawfare. I mean, the lawfare. And it's only going to get worse. You know, and, you know, we also have a government that has been found by 4 judges who'd ruled that the invocation of the Emergencies Act was unconstitutional and unlawful. And, you know, here we are 4 years later serving our sentences you know, trying to work, trying to live our lives after we've been convicted, fine. We're being held accountable, but when does that accountability come? When does that accountability come for any of these scandals that we've just sat back and had to suck up for the last 11 years? Because we have had to suck it up. So personally, I think that we can be so much more. We're being held back. I've had leg shackles on. I know what it's like, and that's exactly what's happening. Is we are being shackled by Ottawa. As I said, we have the talent, we have the resources, we have the land, we have the people, we have the knowledge, and I think get out, talk to your friends. Let's keep this conversation going, and get out there on the 19th, and make sure you check option 2. And get out to these events. Not only do you get information out of these events, but they're always like this is a terrible shot in the arm, I was going to say. It's like a shot in the arm of, just getting together with people that are like-minded. And it is something that makes us special. I was at the Conservative Conference in Calgary, and there was a lot of delegates that came in. And a lot of them that I met had never been to the West before, but they felt it when they got off the plane, you guys. They were just like, as soon as we landed, I just felt like this weight off I feel like I can say things that I want to say. I don't have to be careful about what I'm talking about. They can feel how free it is here. So let's go be free. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Tamara. I think the lesson is that they paid the ultimate price, but where are they? They're not hiding. They're here, and they're still talking, and they're still fighting.